World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Uranology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Uranology, The Art of War. I hope all is well with you, and we are getting close to spring. I know that it has sprung, but it does not feel like spring outside. But I'm sure that will come. Well, it's almost time for people to start taking off their clothes. Not right now, but it will be that way soon. So soon come. We have a show today where we're talking about, in the main, health, but medical cannabis will be part of our subject matter, due to the fact that many people may know, for the last a number of years, we've talked about the health benefits of cannabis. We have had many 420 shows. Code 420 is, we'll talk a little bit about that. Matter of fact, there's an article in this week's Harlem Community News that I wrote about 420. But one of the things that I believe that's important now that cannabis has been legalized is to really focus on the health benefits. A lot of people feel that while it's legalized, a lot of people are going to be getting high, but in most of the states that cannabis have been legalized, there has not been, reefer madness, as the saying goes. So a lot of that is media and misunderstanding. And when I mentioned reefer madness, that was a campaign. But it wasn't for cannabis. It was based on some of the properties of hemp. But nevertheless, that's kind of like what we will focus on. And the person who is my guest today, Makeda Voletta, has a degree, a MS in cannabis medical science, and has done a number of consulting talks as relates to some of the health relations that are attached to the cannabis. She's also a dancer. She is a strength condition specialist, which we'll talk a little bit about that also. And well, why don't we just let me introduce you? Please welcome uh, Makeda Voletta. I believe she's on. Hello,
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, Makeda. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's actually Makeda.
Makeda, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's
Thank
okay.
you. No, it's not okay. Names are extremely important, Makeda.
Hmm. They
And
are.
we know what our strengths and weaknesses are, and sometimes I get that wrong, but I appreciate being corrected. Some people don't do it, and I say, well, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
You know, but
I mean, some people do pronounce it. I know people with my name who pronounce it that way, but not pronounce it Makeda. So it's understandable that you did that. It's okay.
well, it's understandable, but I try to make sure that I do the right thing, and if I mess up again, just stop me and say, no, I told you what it was.
Okay, I'll do that.
I
Hmm.
give you,
Yeah,
permission just to
I
do
got
that.
you. Hmm.
Um, there, I know that uh, you have been doing a lot of work with medical cannabis, but I also know that you also have done a lot of work in keeping people in shape, keeping people fit.
Yes.
That's
Hmm.
been kind of a major component. I must say that I have seen some of your Instagram shows,
Okay. Hmm.
which allows for me to understand that
Hmm.
you got to be strong.
Hmm. Strength is important. Yeah.
I have a friend who, and this is, we'll talk about it. That a lot of people uh, don't really understand when people are doing exercises with a pole. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, uh, pole dancing has whatever, the thought patterns that come with it. However, what is not understood, and if anybody sees a pole, try to
Yeah. So it's very difficult. Yeah.
try to hang on it with your legs
Hmm.
and all of that. But you weren't the first one. A couple of people, of friends, have told me about how that's a very good exercise once you get into it, and I'm sure that it will build yourself into at least your arms and your legs, because those are the things that you use. But
Hmm.
before we get into what I want to talk about as far as medical cannabis,
Hmm.
how did you get into your whole routine of exercises? I mean, tell us a little bit about you and what has brought you to where we are now.
Okay. So my background, I grew up dancing. So I
Mhm.
started studying classical ballet and tap at the Dance Theater in Harlem when I was 5 years old, and then
Oh,
Harlem,
okay.
yeah,
Well, I didn't know that.
yeah, and then Harlem School of the Arts, and then I also played sports growing up. So I played softball, basketball, I fenced. So I played sports and I danced. And then in college, at first I was a biotechnology major.
Hmm.
At first, I wanted to research cures for genetic diseases.
Right.
And so I was really into that. And then I ended up changing majors to exercise and sport science and nutrition. And I was running track in college, and I ran track for a couple of years, and I also was dancing for a dance company. And I was suffering from like shin splints and different things like that when I was in college, and I started to discover how sports medicine doctors drug people up. Um,
Hmm.
and my real passion is has always been about health. It started with being curious about genetic diseases, but my in the biological sciences, or whenever you're learning about like disorders in the body,
Hmm.
I always wondered, why does this happen? Like a lot of times Western medicine is not asking why. They're not trying to get to the root of the problem and fix
Hmm.
that. They're thinking, oh, this person has this disorder. Let's create this to block
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
always wondered why. So that's always how I was. And I was always just really into optimal performance of the body. So when I got into exercise and sports science, it was, all about that. You're dealing with exercise as it pertains to pathology, Like if somebody has diabetes or they have heart issues or, these different things, or you have that side, which is the pathology side of exercise, or you have sports performance, which is a strength and conditioning coach is what I am, is geared towards increasing performance and decreasing injuries in athletes. So like athletes, they go to practice. Like if you're a baseball player, basketball player, you go to practice with your coach. The coach teaches you the skills of the game. But when it comes to like, if you want to run faster, jump higher, you're a sprinter, you don't want to tear your hamstrings. Like there's workouts you do in the weight room to help increase performance and decrease injury. And there's a whole science behind that and a periodization method. So that's my specialty in sports nutrition, which again is all about optimal performance. Over the years, most of my clients have been regular people. And I still apply the same thing. Like you have in the fitness industry, you have like bodybuilding, which I'm not into. Bodybuilding is all about training for a look. They're training to compete and get on stage and flex. Nothing about bodybuilding is healthy. They manipulate food and stuff to have a certain look. But it's like, can you run fast? Do you have agility? Like, can you jump? Like these are important skills. Like you need to be able to physically perform. So my focus is more on physical performance. And as somebody ages, that's still important. Like people blow their back out shoveling snow or, that shouldn't be happening. That happens because people have imbalances. And as you age, you're losing muscle. The most important thing to do as one ages is to be building muscle. So even though, my specialty is athletes, I apply that same thing to regular people. And then I've been like really kind of against pharmaceuticals for like, I'm not a big fan of pharmaceuticals. When I was in the 7th grade, I got addicted to Advil because I had a headache problem. Like I would take Advil for a headache, and it might have been like my twin brother might have noticed that I was taking Advil like every day. So my mom takes me to the doctor, and the doctor talked about rebound. What is it? It's called I forget, but there's a term for it. But basically, if you take Advil for a headache a couple times, you'll start to get a headache because you didn't take the Advil, right? And that's what addiction is. That's what addiction is, where you get sick because you don't take this thing. And now and so when I learned that, I think they call it the rebound effect. So when I learned that back then, I became aware of like trying to understand why do I have these headaches? So what can I do to prevent them? Because I didn't want to take Advil. Then my 10th grade biology, New York City public schools where I received a great education. I learned about how hand sanitizers and antibacterials destroy your microbiome. Like it's really important for us to have, the good bacteria as our first defense against all infectious disease. It's like critically important and you want to protect it. And when you use antibacterial agents, artificial ones, it kills all the bacteria, including the good bacteria that you need. And it makes the bad bacteria mutate and it's just terrible. So I've been aware of that.
Let's slow. I want you to slow down a little bit because what you're saying is information that I think people should have a chance to focus on. And what you're saying is that when you use hand sanitizer, which is something that actually during the pandemic was something that in many cases you had to use. That's a whole nother story. But what then do you recommend? Is just washing your hands when you can't wash your hands?
Yeah, because I want people to use this analogy. If you were cleaning up horse poop, and it got all over your hands, would you want to go wash your hands with running water and soap, or would you just be okay if somebody just gave you hand sanitizer to put on top? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not cleaning. Like, nobody's going to take a bath in the morning and say, I'm not going to get in the shower. I'm just going to pour sanitizer all over me. And would you feel clean? That's not clean. You just covered yourself, first of all, in a bunch of chemicals that are cancer causing. Okay. And your skin is permeable. Like, you don't want to put things on your skin. Like, things can go through your skin and get into your body very easily. So you don't want to put things in your skin, really, generally speaking, that you can't eat. Right. So you're putting all these toxic chemicals all over you. And then you're putting stuff that's killing bacteria. But if you have poop all over you, it's still on you. So the best thing to do, I would rather, if I had the option to cover myself in sanitizer or get in the shower with running water and soap, I'd rather do that. That's number one. Number two, there are natural antibacterial agents, right? Like, during the pandemic, I did not use, I don't care what's happening. I will never put antibacterial soap in my hands. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did, because in Mexico, I was traveling to Mexico, they would make you, when you went into restaurants, use hand
Mm-hmm.
sanitizer. They would have it.
Not only in Mexico, in New York at some point.
Oh, that I never went anywhere in New York. They made me do that, but in
But
Mexico, I remember they made you do that. So what I did was I carried, and maybe I don't know, I didn't see that here, but I carried my own hand sanitizer. Like you can use stuff like garlic and rosemary. They're natural antibacterial agents. So like someplace like Whole Foods or something might sell natural ones. Those aren't bad because they're natural agents. They kill the bad bacteria, but not the good. They feed the good
right.
bacteria. When you use the Purell and stuff, that stuff should really be illegal because what it's doing is it's creating antibacterial resistant bacteria. So we keep hearing about these these stronger versions of viruses and these stronger versions of bacteria. Back in 1999, the Museum of Natural History had a whole exhibit, okay, about the problem on this planet with antiviral resistant viruses and antibacterial resistant bacteria. It's been very well known in science for a long time that the overuse of antibiotics, both in the food system, okay, so fruits and produce is covered in pesticides and herbicides. The animal products, they're also eating the herbicides and pesticides. So it's in the meat, it's in the food, it's completely in it. So you're being exposed that way. And the overprescription of antibiotics by doctors. Doctors prescribe antibiotics for everything. One course of antibiotics severely messes up your microbiome, and it's very hard to build that back. So every subsequent dose you take destroys your microbiome. And your microbiome is super important because we have more bacterial cells in our body than we do our own human cells. Okay, so the bacteria that's in our gut and on our skin, that's your immune system. It plays a role in so many things. So yeah, I don't care what anybody says. I'm not using that stuff.
Well, again, which is probably another show because I'm sure that there's a lot of information and a lot of questions could come up as to well, how or what have you. But so that just means I'm going to have to bring you back up and we can talk
fine.
about some of the ways to avoid that because I can see people now say, "Well, damn, I'm going to a restaurant. What do I do?" So we're going to have to
people sit and cover themselves in that all day. And if you look at it, it says if you ingest it, call the poison control hotline. So you're putting this on your hands and then eating food. That's not. Nothing about it. It's just, yeah.
I'm going to probably have you back on and we'll have to talk about this because I'm sure you got a lot of people not knowing what the hell to do. But what I want to do, though, is, and well, obviously I want to talk to you about your work with cannabis, which I can understand now how you have gone that way based on our conversation. And I don't know whether you were able to see the beginning of the show, but I have done a lot of work and have trained in wellness, actually had wellness clinic. So I understand, what you're saying, which is the other reason why I've done a lot of work with cannabis, because I understand the history of it and why it was demonized because of an economic issue, not necessarily a health issue. But before we get into that, I don't want to stay too long on it, but I just want to get an understanding as to how did you get into using your strength training with a pole. How did that come about?
Because as a strength and conditioning coach, what we study is the most efficient exercises that you can do for, like, there's a bunch of exercises that you can do for your back. There's a bunch of exercises you can do for your abs or for your glutes or your legs, but all of them aren't efficient and all of them aren't beneficial. And when I say efficient, I mean that transfers over into real life activity, right?
Right.
So to me, when I think about exercises, what I do, like, because, my goal is to keep my body intact and functioning as long as possible. I want to be 90 and still be completely functional. I don't want bad knees, none of that, right? So
well, I'm 77, so I want to talk to you about how you
okay, yeah. So the thing is that when I look at exercises, that's how I evaluate them, right? So I don't just do, like, a lot of times people just do exercise to exercise. Like jogging Jogging destroys your knees. If you jog too much, you start to lose muscle, right? And losing muscle is never a good thing. So to me, jogging for miles is not something that's good. A lot of people think, oh, that's a good thing. It's really not, right? So strength training is one thing that's important that you need to do throughout your life, right? And then I also use Black dance. I study a lot of dance from the diaspora, particularly in the Americas and the Congo. So I've studied a lot of stuff from Haiti, a lot of Haitian folklore, Afro-Cuban, Afro-Brazilian, Afro-Puerto Rican, Afro-Dominican, Afro-Colombian, and the Congo, right? So with all of that, like dance in general is good, right? I think dancers have the best body awareness out of any athlete or anybody. And people talk about yoga so much, but in yoga, all you're doing is sitting there and doing poses and being stagnant. Like dance is a different level, especially Black dance, because in Black dance, it involves the hips because you have footwork. So your consciousness has to be in your feet. You have to have your hips are doing something else, your shoulders, your head. A lot of people aren't coordinated in their body. So being able to align your rhythm and parts of your body with rhythms is a higher level ability that transfers into in life, you having good balance, you having good awareness, like you're not going to fall. There's so many different benefits about all my dance teachers that I've studied with Congolese. They haven't, in 20 years, they look exactly the same. Like they have not aged a day. And so I see how, to me, dance is anti-aging, right? And when I say dance, I really believe in Black dance in particular. I'm not talking about ballet because ballet destroys your body, okay? Everything about it destroys you. So there's that. Now, when I look at pole dance, I look at everything that I did. I ran track. I was a softball pitcher. I played basketball. I fenced. I skated. All of that involves your legs, right? I'm like, I can't do a handstand. I can't pull myself up. Like anytime I would try to do pull-ups in the gym, maybe I could do half, right? I could never do pull-ups. And that's an important skill. You never know when you might be hanging from something for your life and you have to pull yourself up. A lot of people can't do that. So I saw that as another way to challenge myself. First of all, I have a dance background. So when you look at pole dancing has become, a lot of people don't realize this, it's become a major fitness thing around the world. There are pole studios all around the world, South Africa, Europe, and Australia, all around the world. And you have different styles of it. Some styles, some styles, if you can imagine a gymnast, right? If you see a gymnast, the way a gymnast moves is completely different than how a dancer moves. Right. If you look at a gymnast do a routine, they could do flips and then they do these dance moves, but the way that they move is not like how a dancer moves. It's very like jerky. It's not graceful like a dancer at all. Now you have dancers who do flips, right? But they execute it like a dancer. So it's a different way of executing. So if you took a gymnast and put them on a pole, you have people who pole dance who look more like gymnasts, very technical type stuff. Like if you see a gymnast do splits, nobody's thinking anything sexual or erotic, but then you can have another girl do the same thing and people are like, oh my God, she's doing a split, or so like it really has to do with how you execute it. So with pole dance, you have different styles. You have women who are trained ballet modern dancers. Like if you could take a modern dancer and put them on the pole and what they're doing looks very, or you could have somebody who is, doing an Atlanta style, where they're twerking in a handstand. But regardless, that's difficult. It's difficult to do a handstand. It's difficult to twerk. It's difficult to do them at the same time. It takes incredible body awareness and strength. So for me, it was something that like it builds up a whole nother. It's combining dance and strength training because pole dancing is strength training. Like when people try to do it,
do you teach people how to do this?
Yeah, I'm not teaching right now, but I was teaching at a studio. I taught at a studio in Brooklyn and the Bronx and Harlem, and I live in Chicago now, and I come back and forth. So I taught at a studio in Chicago, but at the moment, I'm not actively teaching. But I know people in their 60s. I know actually there's a woman with my same name, but she actually pronounces it Makeda. She's in LA. She's like about 67. She pole dances all the time. I taught people in their 70s. Like it's an excellent workout, and it makes it's builds strength.
Well, again, if someone wants to learn or study, or actually, how can they see what you do? How can they go? Is it on YouTube or is there other ways? And then we'll get off of that and get into actually what I want to talk to you about, the medical and how you got from the pole dance and health component into wanting to study about medical cannabis. I believe you talked about it because of the pharmaceutical issue, but
all of it is intertwined. Everything that I told you in the beginning, the point that I was trying to make was I've always been about optimal performance of the body. Right. And that's not just, you have people who are into fitness, but then they'll take pharmaceuticals. They'll take Tylenol. They'll take
Mhm.
antibiotics. They'll use antibacterial soap.
Right.
My point was that I study the body and optimal performance. So that includes what you're putting on your skin. That includes what you're doing with your body. That includes all those things. And
Mhm.
and I'm not with pharmaceuticals. And so that's what I was saying. I've always thought, why does a person have this issue?
Mhm.
Every problem you have is linked to what you're eating.
Mhm.
Okay. Unless you got into an accident or you had like an actual contact, like you got in a car accident or something. Health problems, chronic health problems, genetic health problems, infectious problems, all of that have to do with your nutritional stores, all of it. If you're getting infections, your microbiome is off, your vitamin D levels are probably really low, vitamin A, so that's my approach to the body. So because of that, cannabis made sense because it was like probably in 2017 when I really started to learn
Mhm.
about the medicinal properties. Like before that, I always smoked cannabis and I kind of joked about the medicinal properties. Like I knew it helped me when I was in my menstrual cycle.
Mhm.
Like it just helped me. Like a lot of times I felt uncomfortable, maybe just feel better. And it helped me like when I was really stressed out, like if I was really upset or stressed about something. And
Mhm.
also it helped me get in my zone as a dancer. Like a lot of times before I dance or after I dance, it would help me get in that zone. When I was in college, all the athletes I knew, like I ran track, the football players, basketball, everybody smoked weed. All the athletes I knew did, right? But back then I didn't know I know a lot more now, but in 2017 is when I really started to understand. And then I also like my dad, who's 83, his friends, like all of them, I saw them smoking cannabis all my life. They're extremely intelligent people, some of the smartest people I've come across. None of them have any dementia or brain, so I never believed that it made you stupid like that. I never believed because some of the smartest people that I know.
Neither do I. I'm 77.
Yeah, yeah. So I never believed that. And then come
and
to find
and
out later,
and
yeah.
so it's been about, well, at least 70 years for me.
Yes.
Well, I wasn't seven when they started, but I was young.
I
So
don't know.
people say, "Well, how can you do all of this stuff?" And I tell them, I said, I mean, my hidden secret was now I'm out of the closet because it's legal, but it helps me with so many things. My eyes, my circulation. I was in the martial arts for most of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and even with that, even though sometimes I got punished for doing that because I wasn't as sharp as I should have been because I was thinking about something else when I shouldn't have been. However, the performance, all of those things we understand, and what I think is important and what I would like you to talk a little bit about, and I'll kind of start it off, is that there has been a tremendous injustice, and there's always injustice sometimes when you talk about economics and the robber barons or whoever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Rockefellers and the DuPonts and many of the industry giants at a certain point of time in America decided that hemp, which is part of the cannabis plant, would be a disruptor to their paper, to their clothing lines, to the oils. You could run cars off of hemp.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They said, well, and you could just grow it. Anybody can grow it, and they created reefer madness. That's the whole concept, as you know, as relates to allowing for people to. And as you were saying with magicians and people in the music world, I mean, for all of those reasons that you gave, but it had nothing to do with that health component. So that's something I know that you know, and that's what has that type of research and studies have allowed for things to happen the way they are now, legalization, medical. What we have not been able to do, and I want you to talk a little bit about this, like Canada, even Jamaica, which was interesting when Jamaica became legal, but that's another story. But we haven't been able to do, and I'm sure the pharmaceuticals have a lot to do with it too, to really do the research to understand exactly why this ancient herb has been able to do so many healing and so many things for the body, because the research is not allowed. Some countries, Canada, and I know Jamaica, are doing that. When you studied, you have an MS, I believe, in medical cannabis. What are some of the things that you believe can happen if first of all, if it becomes legal and you can actually do some of the research that now is being barred? But what are some of the things in your studies have you learned as it relates to the health, and why this herb has been so important for health for so long and has been demonized?
Okay, so you're saying, wait, ask the question one more time. What have I learned?
Well, in I was a philosophy major, so you got to excuse me.
No, that's okay.
Tell us about your studies about medical cannabis.
Okay. So first of all, one of the things I learned that really surprised me that a lot of people don't know is that the FDA has already approved 3 pharmaceuticals that are imitation THC and CBD. And these drugs were approved. I don't want to get the years wrong, but I feel like it might have been in the 90s or the early 2000s. So, and also cannabis was a part of the U.S. pharmacopoeia from 1840 to 1920. Mm-hmm. So from 1840 to 1920, it was a part of the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, which is like a publication that was published, by pharmacists of all the treatment medications and treatments. And so cannabis was prescribed for over 50% of medical conditions. So they and when you start looking around the world, many countries have a long history of using cannabis medicine, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like
all the way back to Kemet.
Mm-hmm. Yes, like all over the world, you have that. And so the fact that they're like, oh, we need more research and stuff, it's like, to me, okay, number one, you can do research to find out the mechanism of action as to how this works, right? How, like, you might know it helps with this, but you want to know how it's doing that. That's one thing. But just to prove that it helps with all these things, we need to do more research stuff that they try to tell cannabis people is like, a lot of that is just the pharmaceutical industry trying to suppress, because they already have 3 FDA approved drugs. And it's known, like there's a cannabis nurse I interviewed in Chicago who her whole practice, she's a nurse practitioner, but her whole practice is taking people with serious health problems, getting them off these medications and having them use cannabis instead. And she worked in the hospital on a cancer ward. And she said that she had to administer Marinol, which is the FDA approved THC, and that these cancer patients, like all they want to do is smoke a joint. Like it's known that the FDA approved version is not as beneficial as the actual plant. Mm-hmm. And the food industry and the drug industry does that. The food industry does that too. So to know that, so it's like, yes, more research, needs to be done in certain areas, but there's a lot of things that's already known. It's just that with Western science, like I have a background in Western science, so I believe in it, but at the same time, I believe in indigenous science. And I feel like when you see people have done something for generations, for thousands of years, and they have thrived and they were healthy for thousands of years doing this, to me, there's nothing that proves that something works more than that. Like you're basing that based on a study for 20 years or 10 mm-hmm. years, but somebody was doing this for thousands of years.
I hear what you're saying, and what I'm saying is a little different. I don't believe that we really are at the point of truly understanding what cannabis can do for the human body as it relates to. I think that we, through observation and through certain knowledge, that if we know, they know, but some of the work I know that's happening in Jamaica and to a point Canada is to begin to really understand, because I don't think we do, at least.
There's a lot that's understood. So when you say we, I don't know who we is.
When I say we, I'm talking about as far as, I guess humanity as
You might be
just like.
so there's a difference between the general public and the science community, because the general public doesn't read scientific studies, so they're not even looking for it. So some people don't know because they haven't done the work to search and do the research to begin with. They just don't know because it didn't cross their path, but they never actually actively went and sought out research, right? And if you don't have a science background, it might be hard for you to understand some of it. But there's a lot of research, there's a lot of understanding of how it works in the body. Like, I'm not saying every single thing is understood, but every single thing is not understood about anything now that we use, right? But there's a lot that's understood. We have a whole endocannabinoid system, right? And they don't teach this in medical school, but it's like, we know we have a circulatory system, a respiratory system, a immune system, a reproductive system, a lymphatic system, an immune system. We have all these systems. They're a central nervous system, and we also have an endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system modulates all of the rest of the systems in our body. And we have endocannabinoid receptors. So the term endocannabinoid, right? We have endocannabinoids that our body makes. Our body actually makes cannabinoids. And then we have phytocannabinoids, which is what comes from the plant, right? So THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, all of those are cannabinoids that are produced by the plant. Those are phytocannabinoids. Our body produces them, okay? Anandamide, which is like the natural THC, just like with tobacco, our body produces acetylcholine, and the tobacco plant has nicotine. Nicotine is the plant version of acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter, right? So the same thing is true with cannabis. Our body produces cannabinoids on demand when we need it, our nerves. And so we have cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2 receptors all over like every organ of our body. And so that's the reason why there's so many applications for cannabis for so many things, because when it the THC binds to those receptors. CBD works by a different mechanism. It's a different mechanism of action in terms of how it works, but they interact with the receptors, and then it modulates. So if somebody has pain and they have nerve pain, and now the cannabinoids bind to those nerves, it modulates and calms that pain down, or the inflammation or different things. So that is understood. And yeah, so and then there's also many applications. A lot of times when people think medical cannabis, they just think, oh, people are smoking weed or they're just eating like brownies. And it's like, no, there's so many different applications. There are topical applications. You have suppositories that can be used, tinctures, and it just depends on how you're using it and what you're using it for. But no, there's a lot that's understood with that. It's just that the general public, unless you like, some people are in the cannabis space where they're like, they might know about the endocannabinoid system, but a lot of the general public doesn't know about that.
And what I'm seeing a lot now, because obviously, even though it's legal, smoking has a certain type of aroma. So I know a lot of people are doing things like brownies or gummies or vapes with oils, or what you have to be careful with that. Unless
actually, you shouldn't use them. Those are terrible. But yes, go ahead.
But and we should talk a little bit about that, because that is something that people have used, I think, out of convenience, because in many cases you can't just light up a joint every place, to do that. But at the same point, you want to have those qualities that come with it. Not even talking about the high. I'm just talking because in many cases, at least for me, I noticed that you can get a CB. You can get CBD, which has been legal even before cannabis, but for me, for the pains that I use, at certain times, my knees, being, 77, if it doesn't have THC in it, it's not going to be as effective to me as it is with this, without, THC.
I'm glad you brought that point up. Because, so I'm going to say my first cannabis medicine teacher before I went into this program was a Jamaican friend of mine, who really started. He's an engineer. He's like an rocket scientist.
Astrophysics.
Yeah, something like that. But when he taught me about it, And engineers have very good brains. But one of the things there's certain things that I've always kept with me that he said that has remained in the background. And he always felt like THC was more medicinal. Like a lot of times people use THC and CBD for similar things.
Mhm.
Some things you could, in theory, according to like science, you could say that CBD is better for immune system issues, and THC is going to be better for pain. But there are people who use CBD for pain and they say it works, right? But also people are personal, because like some people will say they get great relief from CBD. Some people don't. But to me, I don't know if it's a bias in my head, but I tend to feel like THC is going to be more, if I'm using it for pain, like you're saying, like for my knees, I'm going to use THC. And yeah, so
Yeah.
it's
Well,
nice.
because I guess now getting back, we were talking about vaping and the oils and gummies, and because people, this is a kind of that's what 420, and I'll talk about the whole 420, but it's about educating and letting people know, because this is new to a lot of people.
Yes, it is.
Especially, and we'll hit this before we leave, seniors. I mean,
Yes.
But before we get to that, and that's going to be after you talk about.
Don't forget to get to that.
We might have to have another show.
Okay, that's fine. We can do it.
But the gummies, they got organic gummies and they got organic oils. What's your issue with those?
Okay, so first of all, like the issue, since we're talking about the medical side, right? Because the medical people say that, but a lot of the medical side is really being like really kind of not ignored. And my background is also in nutrition, right? So I evaluate products, and with gummies, like I have some right here, like these ingredients that they have. Okay, the way that the gummies and stuff are composed that you buy in the dispensary, a lot of times they have terrible ingredients. Like it's like emulsifiers and artificial colors and artificial.
It's like vegan food, some vegan food.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is. Yeah, because actual gummies is really just gelatin, and gelatin is actually good for you, right? But when people don't want to use gelatin because they're like, oh, it's from an animal, and you can get pork gelatin, beef gelatin, but gelatin from an animal is actually good for your gut. But when people don't want to use gelatin, now they want to use emulsifiers and all these chemicals, right? And then they're adding the artificial flavors. All that stuff is not good for you. If you're using it, if you have diabetes, if you have cancer, if you have anything, that should not be what you're eating. Like,
so what should you do in that case?
I'm answering the question. So I'm just saying, because I'm going through the things that you're saying. So like somebody could make, if somebody really wants gummies, they can make it themselves, with better ingredients. But when you're going to the dispensary, I've never seen one that has good ingredients. Now, if somebody's taking such a small amount, like I know people who use it for sleep, right? So they might take a piece of a gummy every night or a piece of one every few nights. If somebody's doing that, it's not the end of the world because it's such a small amount. Even though the ingredients aren't great, it's such a small amount. But you have people who might be, using it for stuff where they're taking more than that, and then eating all that stuff is not good, right? So there's that. So I'm not saying that you can't use it maybe for certain things, but it's just not great. Then like the brownies and stuff, like I definitely don't think that's another thing. If you have diabetes, if you have cancer, if you got into an accident and you're trying to recover, the last thing you need to be doing is eating brownies, right? So I don't think like if people want to eat that because they just want to have fun, but if you're using it medicinally, I wouldn't recommend that it be inside of, except for and we'll go into the elderly. There could be a situation where you're dealing with an elderly person and maybe this little brownie makes them happy. Okay. Then let them have it. Right. There's not, so, but it can have its place. Right. Now the vaping and stuff, the vape pens are terrible for you. Okay. They are not when people have dry herb vapes where they're actually putting the dry herb in there. That's okay. But the vapes where they have the cartridges, those are causing people to have electrical burns in their lungs. And it's really bad. So I would not mess with that. Now, in terms of edibles, you asked me, what can somebody do? So there's different options, right? So people can, one thing I'm interested in actually doing more around is cooking with it, because so I talked about our endocannabinoid system and how our body makes cannabinoids, right?
Mhm.
Our body makes cannabinoids on demand when something stressful happens to us. Also, when people talk about the runner's high, people always said we get the runner's high from dopamine. The runner's high comes from endocannabinoids. That's what
Right.
it's now. Our body produces endocannabinoids from something called arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid is only in animal fats. It's in butter, it's in steak, it's in eggs, it's in dairy. It's not in plants at all. So that's why like eating a buttery meal can make you happy actually. You know what I'm saying? And it can be good for you. It's good for your brain and all of that. So to me, I'm thinking like if somebody when in the medical cannabis world, a lot of people I see who use it for chronic conditions like because I was already tuned into diseases and why people have everything's an epidemic right now, especially amongst the younger generation. But just period, everything is at even Alzheimer's. My mom said that that wasn't like as common back then when she was a kid. Like
Mhm.
everything is more and more and more and more common.
Mhm.
And
Because
so,
of the foods and
yeah, and a lot of
the
people have been told don't eat liver. If you're a certain age, you ate liver, or you were made to eat liver. Now people are eating organ meats. People are told don't eat red meat, don't eat eggs, don't eat butter. Oh, don't eat butter. Consume this fake butter. All of that stuff, and those are all the foods you need. Is the eggs, is the butter, is the bacon. You see somebody that lived to be 99.
can't get eggs too often now, though.
I get them from the farm, and I get them. My egg prices have not changed, right? So the thing is that that's number. So to me, when I think of using it medicinally, I would combine it. I would do like if somebody's recovering from surgery, if somebody's recovering from they're being sick, gastrointestinal issues, I would put some cannabis oil. Like I have some. This is like some coconut infused cannabis oil that I have in here.
Mhm.
What I do is I put that in like a brothy soup, a warm soup, and put some
Mhm.
coconut infused cannabis oil and consume that.
Mhm.
Or like when I have headaches, I use cannabis oil for my headaches. What I do, I make tea every morning with raw milk that I get from the farm, a tea called yerba mate, which is a tea from South America. Or I use matcha, either one of those. I warm up the raw milk, and I put and I might combine it with some chai, and I put this cannabis infused coconut oil in my tea, and I consume it. That's what I do when I have headaches, or when I got into a car accident. And I got into a car accident like 4 years ago, and my back was in excruciating pain. Like I looked fine, but I could not even like get up and stand up. I was going to acupuncture, doing all these things. What helped me was the cannabis oil, and I put it inside of my tea. So
Mhm.
you can do that. Somebody can have cannabis infused butter.
Now, where do you get cannabis oil from?
So I made this. And I make them, but like this, somebody can make this at home. I make them,
Mhm.
but also
So
dispense.
when you say make them, you buy the flour and then you boil the flour, I guess. Or how do you?
So I get the flour and I decarboxylate it.
Mhm.
I have something some people do this in the stove. I don't. I have like a machine that I use. But this is
Mhm.
the process whether you do it on a stove or in a machine. You have to decarboxylate the weed first. And so it's like you're heating it at a temperature, I don't know what the temperature is. It might be like 250 for
Mhm.
30 minutes or something like that, right?
Mhm.
And so you have to decarboxylate it because what happens is in the cannabis flower, you have delta 9 THC gives you that intoxicating feeling. But that you
Mhm.
need fire in order for that to happen.
Mhm.
Before that, if you don't add fire, like if you just have cannabis flower,
Mhm.
it's THCA. THCA won't make you intoxicated. If you eat
Mhm.
cannabis flower all day, you're not going to feel that, right? It
Right.
converts delta 9 THC with the fire. So you have to decarboxylate it.
Mhm.
Then I have it. You put it inside of put it inside the coconut oil. I might have it sit there for 5 hours at a certain temperature, right?
Mhm.
Let's say it's at 275. I don't
Mhm.
remember the exact temperature, but let's say it's 275 for 5 hours.
Mhm.
And it just extracts. So that's how I make the oil.
and 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 you are a special person because I'm sure that the average person is not going to go through that process.
No, they're not, and that's why. I mean, like I sell the oil, but before I started making it, the Jamaican friend of mine who I said first started teaching me, he was making it, and so I would get it from him, right?
Mhm.
He made it, and when I first started learning about it from him, he had gotten attacked and was in the hospital with like his jaw was like broken in several places. It was wired shut, and the cannabis oil is what helped him with the extreme pain he was dealing with. Because the thing is, with the endocannabinoid system, cannabinoids also bind to our opioid receptors, right? So they're very powerful with reducing pain. Opioids, of course, we know are super addictive. Okay, cannabis is not. Also, opioids can kill you because we have opioid receptors in the part of the brain that affects our breathing. So that's why people die from opioids, because it will bind to those receptors and stop you from breathing. Cannabis does not do that. We don't have cannabinoid receptors in that part of our brain, so it's not going to. So it's much safer and it's a very effective pain reliever. So
Now,
yeah.
question, because we have a couple of more minutes.
Mm-hmm.
One, you've given a lot of information. If someone wanted to have you as a consultant or give them advice on certain things, how would they be able to reach you, or do you still do those types of things?
No, I do still do it, and I really need to, get my website up because I'm like trying to revamp it with all my services. So that will be done soon. But right now I'm on Instagram.
You have some people that can help you, but that's another story. We can talk.
Yeah, that okay, we can talk. So I'm on Instagram, and my Instagram is The Body Scientist, but it's the_body_scientist. So The Body Scientist with an underscore in between the and body. And then also I have a YouTube channel and email address. You can email me at thebodyscientist81. So it's The Body Scientist, all one word, the number 8 and the number 1 at gmail.com.
Right.
And my YouTube channel, The Body Scientist 81, same as my email address. So those are ways that I can be found now. Yes.
All right.
And I do still work with people, and you're talking about the
seniors. Seniors.
I'm sorry. Seniors. I apologize for that. Seniors have been like my number one group of people that I've been working with over the past few years. And the thing is, with seniors, doctors definitely try to drug seniors up. They try to do it to everybody, but they definitely try to do it as you age. And a lot of the medications that people are on, cannabis could have helped with that. And a lot of the medications that people are on are causing other problems, but then they get
which is why you get other medication for, when I look at especially like CNN, for some reason, CNN and MW, one of those other stations, the pharmaceutical companies kind of really sponsor those shows. And every commercial you have, if it's a minute, there's 30 seconds about the commercial and it's beautiful and all. And then you hear, but see your doctor. And one of the things that really gets to me is that this could be harmful if you're allergic to it. Now, how do I know that I'm allergic to it if I don't try it?
That's true.
But if you try it, it can kill you.
It can definitely kill you. That's true.
And I'm trying to think, well, damn, is that worse than what I got? That I'm gonna,
No. You see the side effects, and look, and let me tell you one of the things that happens. People, like, if in life we have losses, you can have someone that they lost a parent, they lost a child. They go to the doctor, and the doctor asks them how they're feeling. They say that they're sad, which is normal because you just went through a loss. But the doctor automatically prescribes Zoloft, right? And antidepressants can make people homicidal and suicidal, right?
And they give it to the kids at a very early age,
And then it can start to cause dementia and brain issues. So it's like, instead of, not just cannabis, but also like mushrooms, a lot of those things have been shown to help people with serious trauma. Military
for centuries.
Trauma. Exactly.
For centuries.
Yes.
And one of the things, I guess you take things with a yin and yang concept. And I know the media has been beating up on RFK Jr. because of the measles. However, I believe that it's not the measles, it's just exposing some of the things that we're talking about, because that's hitting a lot of money when you start to talk about it.
It is.
you
It
know,
definitely
you know,
is.
that's an interesting one to follow because uh,
Mhm.
based on certain convictions that I've had, I would read some of the research that comes about that you never know about, and that came out of Robert Kennedy. No matter what you might want to say, the research was there and it was true.
It is. No, you're right. No, you're right. It's interesting because although I can't stand Trump, it's like RFK Jr., like the things he's saying is true and he gets ridiculed because the thing people don't understand about there's a lot of politics in science and
Of course,
it's very
and
corrupt
everything.
because the food industry and that's the thing, like my first graduate program, I first went to a program at Teachers College. I didn't finish that program at Columbia. That one was in applied physiology and nutrition, right? And when I went into that program right out of undergrad, and I remember them saying they made us aware of the fact that, they always said they were the only nutrition program in the country that was not funded by food companies, right? Every single nutrition program in America is funded by the food companies.
And medical
That's what I was going to
schools are
say. Just like
funded by
every medical,
pharmaceuticals.
exactly. That's exactly that.
What I
Exactly.
need to do,
Exactly.
one, is to have you back on our show because there's so much that we haven't talked about
Yep.
that I would like to talk to you about,
Okay.
especially based on. And I'll talk to you offline because again, I'm one of the people that you specialize in. I'm trying to. Maintain, I'll be 78 June the 19th, and
Yes.
I haven't taken any pharmaceuticals, any of
Yeah.
those types of
I'm
things.
so happy to hear that.
And I owe that, publicly. I owe that to the fact that I have been smoking cannabis for all my life.
That's good. Yes.
But and I'm healthier than many of the people my age at 77. Knocking on wood,
Mm-hmm.
I can still do things.
Mm-hmm.
Don't run as much. I have a rebounder, which is
Oh, that's great.
a great exercise. I might not be on the pole, but I can do the rebound.
That's good.
you know,
That's good. Yep.
and that helps me do some things. Is better on my knees now. But
Mm-hmm.
being a martial arts for most of my life, my knees and certain things
Mm-hmm.
are not where they want to be as you start to age a little bit. But even that. But the bottom line, thank you for your time. One more time, if someone wants to connect with you, give us the best way for them to do that.
Okay.
Should it be email? Should it be on your? Give all of those things so that this
So
people can.
email and Instagram is the best, or LinkedIn. No, probably email or Instagram. So Instagram is _body_scientist.
Mm-hmm.
The body scientist.
Mm-hmm.
And email is the body scientist, all one word,
Mm-hmm.
the number 8 and the number 1 at gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, thank you so much for your time sharing information. It is, I didn't know all of these things about you. I've only seen you in a different light. I knew that you were, doing a lot of exercise, but I didn't know you were this deep, but
Yes, I am. I definitely am. Yes, I am. Yeah.
So I'm glad that we've had the conversation. And for those who might not know, 420, which is in next Sunday, is kind of a code name for people when the whole movement towards legalization came about. And that came out of, some people say, out of California, because 420 was a code for cannabis, or the Grateful Dead used code 420, and that became that code. But the point and the reason why I had you on is that when you hear about 420, people sometimes will say, oh, that's when everybody gets high. But no, I think it's the time that we educate people as relates to the miseducation that many people have had through cannabis. And that was the purpose of this show. And you did a great job, my dear. So I appreciate you, and
Thank
I'm sure that the message. I do have an article coming out in the Harlem Community News, also talking about the same thing, because 420 is a time for education, and I believe that that is how we should look at it rather than the time to get high. Not
Yes.
to say that there's anything wrong with that,
I agree. I agree. Yes.
but education and both is important. So thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Take
Have a
care.
good day. You
Bye.
too.
All
Bye.
right. And when you come back in the city, let us know.
Okay, I definitely will.
All right.
All right. Oh, and you know what? Actually, I'm here every month, and I'm always here. And you're a Gemini, like both of my parents. Are you a Gemini or a Cancer?
Yeah, I'm a Gemini. June 19th.
Yeah, my mom is the 15th, and yeah, so I'll be actually here around that time too. But I'm here every month, so I'm always back and forth.
All right. So let me know. Give me a
Okay.
text. We're connected so that we can sit and talk.
Okay.
And I probably need your advice.
Okay, yes, I got it. You got it.
I want to at least 10, 20, 15 more years, hanging out. So
Okay. Yes. Well, you're good right now for not for being physically active and not taking medications. That's
not at all, Well, anyway, take care. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk soon. Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Again, 420 is next Sunday. It's a time to educate a lot of people, because what I have found is that there has been a lot of miseducation, a lot of fear, or reefer madness, because that was the gimmick that allowed for people to become misled, because not of the cannabis, but of the hemp. So hopefully all of that has helped. See you next week. Don't forget December 2025, we're going to Ghana. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week. This is Tony Rogers signing off, and wishing you a good week and weekend. Take care. Bye.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.